What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Chadman and Randy Show. If you're back for this one, that means you liked the first episode, and you're ready for some more here with my buddy Nate Bales. Man, that first episode was cool, and we got into so much, and you kind of gave us a thorough explanation into what you're all into. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the dark arts are? Is that what it is, dark arts, right?
Yeah.
What is the dark arts?
You know, I like to look at it as practical spirituality.
Okay.
And this is spirituality that you can actually. It's not just a feel-good faith and take you carry you to the next day with a positive attitude. And
it's not your daily word that you get on your phone.
Yeah, something to cling on to, but it's something that you can immerse yourself into, and you can start to wield the underlying power of it into your life and utilize it to progress and to attain your highest destiny, to build your empire here.
Okay, to better yourself.
Exactly, and it's utilizing methods that are, people call them forbidden, and that really comes into religion inserting its hand, saying that dabbling with these things is a no-no. And you know what? And it's funny because in a lot of ways I'm grateful for religion having all of these stigmas about don't touch, because I think there's a lot of people out there who shouldn't be turning on the keys to this engine.
Yeah, I don't want to get behind an Indy 500 card. I know what you're saying. Not everyone's not meant to do certain things.
Absolutely.
What works for one person isn't going to work for another. That's kind of what I see this as, man. I'm kind of like learning and learning more I can about everything. And when it comes to this particular subject, that's what I'm learning, is that it's not for everybody.
Especially this, it's absolutely not, and it's not for the dabbler. It's not for people who are coming towards it with an already created hypothesis of what it is. When you connect with these type of forces on a conscious level, you make substantial contact, and you're really that withdrawn, that's when you open like a can of worms in your life. You're dabbling with something that you are blind to. I mean, utilizing all the five senses, you're blind, but you're also blind cognitively of what you're dealing with and how to work in alignment with these things.
Can the wrong person with the wrong view, or maybe ignorant person, ignorant be a word to say, can they create something different than what they're actually kind of going for?
Absolutely. In a lot of this, you'll have what's called blowback. There's a lot of amateur magicians out there that get into this, and they're trying to go through it like a textbook. And it's funny because it's very subtle. It's spirituality. So, but they're trying to go through it like it's automotive instructions for put something back together. Right. And in doing so, you have somebody. I've been contacted saying, "Hey, I did everything in this ritual right. I thought everything was supposed to work out. What's going on? In fact, things are worse than they were before I started."
What I've heard on reasons not to dive into this is because sometimes you make things worse on yourself.
And the reason that will happen is because ritual, when you go on to the inner guts of what ritual is amazing. And you'll see ritual in all different types of religion, but what it is,
communion's the most popular one.
Exactly. It's taking a purpose, it's taking a desire, and it is ramping it up, it is wheeling it up, and it is putting it into dynamic motion, into all the cross layers of reality. Now, when you look at ritual in the black arts, it's kind of like juggling a circus act. There's a lot of different things going on at the same time. For one, you are to be able to operate in any of this, whether it's you're trying to evoke a spirit, you're trying to use divination to tap into subtle information, or you're trying to engage the higher faculties of yourself and tap into astral travel, soul travel, stuff like that. The first thing you have to do that ties it all together which meditation is the gateway for, is changing your brainwave states. Right now, the conversation that we're having right now, we are firmly embedded in alpha and beta.
Right.
That's where you really cognate a deep communication.
Right.
So we're grounded in alpha and beta. Now, when I start to engage a meditative state, what I'm doing is I'm taking my brain waves and I'm starting to let them descend into theta.
Okay.
Now, theta is, when you start to get into deep theta, you'll see a lot of people, especially in the spiritual arts, all these different aspects, they'll refer to it as a Gnostic state, Gnostic trance. That's the preemptive state that you start to get into to be able to tap into all these subtle energies and influences and information, everything that's swooning around, that's just a fingerprint away. But you start to descend through theta, and you get deep. The deeper you get into theta, you start activating the subtle parts of yourself that can communicate consciously with these energies.
So how do you, like, when you communicate, I mean, is it an actual voice, or is it kind of like a feeling? What is it that you receive?
What's funny, because there's progressive stages.
So somebody just diving into it, they're not going to hear like a voice in their head and be like, holy shit, what was that?
You know, sometimes the planets kind of align in your life, so everything's lined up and you're in the right state, so you will kind of get a brush with things, these beings on another plane that are scraping close to ours, where the veil is very thin. But for the most part, when you're intentionally getting into this, you're toggling brainwave states into theta, and you take theta all the way down till you're almost bottoming out, and now you're starting to approach what's called delta. And when you're this tranced out in deep theta, now you start feeling like you're going to pass out. And what you're doing is you're walking this fine line, and I kind of like to look at it like there's that one Indiana Jones movie. It's like, I think it's like in the Holy Grail or some shit, where he's finally made it. He's down to the tavern where the knight's protecting the grail, but what he has to do is he has to close his eyes and he has to walk out onto this little precipice that's an invisible walkway that connects one side of the canyon to the other. And as he's doing that, now he's crossing into a different territory. And that's what's happening when you get down to delta. You're either gonna fight through it, and you're gonna remain conscious. And what's going on is your own conscious interaction with the world around you is transmutating to be able to behold things on a whole different level of the senses. So if you can survive this, if you can get deep into this, and then you can ride out delta, it can take anywhere from a minute to a few minutes, you'll arrive at what's called the crossroads. This, if you've gone through the other procedures to make substantial contact with the spirit, this is kind of where they hopscotch down from wherever they were at. You've called them out of the mainframe of reality to meet you now at the crossroads, which is really just a state. It's not a place. But you are now in a state to be able to behold this. And when you cross-reference that with brainwave states, you've now survived the onslaught of delta, and you're arrived now at the bottom part of delta, but you're also now on the springboard of gamma. Now this is where it gets kind of trippy, man, because gamma brainwaves can go off the fucking charts, and it's when people are in gamma that they're able to engage things like telekinesis, ESP. Okay. So it's kind of a nice little interesting collusion there when you kind of see these external examples of what's going on with these brainwave states. But when you're there, now you are in a state that's conducive and sensitive to be able to interact with these things consciously. And like I said, the states progress for how you can interact with them. So usually when people first get into this, they'll think, oh, nothing's there. But they'll feel like something's there, but they can't see it, they can't hear it, they can't engage it with the senses. of sight, smell, hear, touch, all that
Right.
shit. Now, and this is where things kind of get out of hand. They can get dangerous or they can get powerful.
Right.
Is you have to understand is that this ancient force that is conscious energy is arrived. It has, if you've also gone through the other parts of summoning through evocation, you use things, and I can get into that, it's incantation and in conjuration to be able to call that force to you in a proximity that's perceivable by both. So you've called this force, you'll be deep in the state, and it'll be towering over you. And it depends on what you've called. I mean, it could be very infernal or chthonic, very, what people would call very satanic, demonic.
Just like scary as shit.
Could be beyond that. And and something you can't even think of. It's that intense. Or it could be an angel, or it could be something positive. It could be a whole different...
something full of love.
Could be anything. But when you're in that state, they can see you, and the interesting thing is that there's a psychic connection, and so they can make this connection. So not only can they see you, but they can read you psychically. They can see if you're full of fear, if you're full of confidence. They can read beyond the surface of the situation, so they're already prepared on how to handle you or how to manipulate you.
That right there is what I think would be the main.
It's crazy now
because you're for all intents and purposes you're vulnerable.
You are in a vulnerable state now, and absolutely, because when you come to this and you're pretty much a newbie in it. I mean, you don't have the experience, you don't have the understanding, so the only way to do it is to hop back in the pool and keep doing it. But with every experience that you do with this practical application, you take something from it. Something that you put in your toolbox. You would put something in your journal. Oh, this time I experienced that. I started to receive this. But kind of going back from it now, as a black magician, successfully versed in this, you would, once you've made contact with the entity, if you were there fucking around, this is where it's going to fuck your life up.
Right. If you're there just fucking for shits and giggles and just to say, I did this.
You've opened the genie bottle and you weren't ready for it. But now, if you're taking this serious and it knows that you've called it for a purpose that's in alignment for what it is, now it waits kind of for you to catch up. So now you engage another syntax of being able to, it's called basically structuring a matrix. So you quiet yourself, and you can feel the energy signature around you. Now it starts with the internal. So you would clear your mind. Your imagination is kind of like the flux capacitor for all that this is balanced and teeters upon. So you clear your mind. You make it blank. You create a blank inner canvas for this consciousness now to be able to communicate with you. So if you clear your mind, and you have this force before you, you start to go through the process of what do you look like. And I'll usually start with, to kind of help it, I almost kind of make like a model for it to kind of start slapping details on. So I'll visualize a silhouette of a person.
Right.
Just head, shoulders, straight body.
Right.
And now, depending on what spirit I've called, and I say, what do you look like? Reveal yourself to me. Build a visual compound for me to be able to behold.
Right.
You'll start to notice that details start to distill. It's almost like looking at somebody down like a dark alley.
And then
But you keep looking at them. And the closer they come, you start to see things starting to reveal. And after a while, you start to see kind of like the shapes. You'll see if they're wearing something. Clothing, a cloak, a robe, armor. Now, also keep in mind that this isn't what they normally look like. They are communicating. They are creating an avatar to represent what they are,
right,
in a way that you recognize and
you can
see it
understand
for what it is. Exactly.
Right. So it might be something different, for me than what it might be for you. If it was the same thing.
Dude, exactly. It's gonna create a portrayal to you, Chad, to be able to accurately represent its highest portrayal to you, But the funny thing is, when you start to look at different black magicians, people who are involved in this art, you'll start to see that sometimes there's a common thread. They'll say, yeah, man, everything, it had scales, it had horns that rolled a certain way. It had characteristics that are common to people who haven't had previous interaction. So that's another verifiable trait when you start to engage other people that take these arts seriously, and not just take them seriously, but practically engage them, as opposed to just armchair theory them apart, pick it apart all day, just postulate what's going on. But when you get into this and you start to go through the process, I mean, now it starts blowing the doors on reality as you perceived it prior open, and also not just the way it is, but now the potential for how you can interact in it. And going back to the process of this, you would go through the visual part, and then I would say, okay, well, what do you sound like? And sometimes I've heard like a voice come straight from the figure. Sometimes I've heard it kind of booming on both sides. It depends on how it wants to portray itself.
Like an actual voice.
Actual voice. And it could be very deep. It could be very gnarly. It could be very suave and soothing, almost like a siren on a beach, like a mermaid. It could be any way that it wants to, that you're going to be able to perceive it to relate to what it is. But you can do this for all the five senses. What does the air smell like where you're at? You can create this environment internally. Now here's where it shifts. You start to get this going on so intense on the internal canvas inside that you don't know if your eyes are open or shut. And it starts to change from the internal to the external. Before you know it, you're starting to see this being before you. And you're anchored into this theta gamma sync to be able to see it and commune with it. Now, that's a lot to kind of go through to be able to interact with an entity.
Yeah, that seems like an awful, like that seems...
Now that's, and that's when you really want to take it deep and you want to get things as accurate as possible. And there's, and again, tying this with ritual, so that's kind of like one of the spinning plates I was telling you that ritual is.
Right.
At the same time, you, in connecting with something, say, and we'll use your show, for instance. So say that if you were doing a ritual to blow your show out of the fucking water, to make it nationally recognized, you're finding opportunities to ascend the corporate ladder of opportunity and really take the show up to the next motherfucking level.
Right.
So if I was ritualizing this, I would probably hook it up with a spiritual, almost a demonic king called King Paimon, and a very powerful, very popular spirit from a grimoire called the Goetia that was utilized by and compounded by King Solomon.
You talk about King David, because I guarantee, hold your thought, but I guarantee you, if you're listening to this, a lot of you are probably like, what the fuck did you just say? But King Solomon was King David's son. Mm-hmm. King Solomon was a very interesting character, both historically and in the Bible, depending on if you separate the two. So you're referring to a historical person.
Yes.
Yeah, King Solomon was into this. So go on.
Oh yeah, and so I would be utilizing this particular demonic king in that grimoire, that book, that compounded book of spirits. It was more like a catalog. And King Paimon, his best forte is general influence. So when you look at influence can be implemented on many different levels. So I would engage going through the motions to make a substantial conscious connection with King Paimon. And at the same time, while I'm engaging these states to be able to come into a close proximity to him, my personal concern is I'm not so worried about going through the whole syntax of being able to see King Paimon in front of me, all that shit. From experience, I know that as soon as I can make conscious contact with him, he's there. and he's reading me, he's seeing me, he's connected with my deepest internal.
Now, when you say demon,
mechanism.
are you referring to like a fallen angel type demon?
You know, and again, it's
because I'm trying to understand this on my level, man.
Sure,
you know?
sure, and that's how people would mostly be able to categorize it, even though it transcends that little compartment that we call demon.
It's far greater than what the Bible and what we've come to know. Because that's what I believe, that when you say angels or demons, what I see it as are entities that are just older than time. When you say demon, we're referring to, I think of it as like this gargoyle-like almost entity that's going to, wreak havoc, and, I think of Cthulhu and shit like that. Like, right?
and that is, in many ways, kind of close to
But like when they see, but I guess, because me personally, if I were to get into this and I were to start doing everything you just said, I'd be worried that as soon as I saw King Pyman, he's gonna like fucking possess me. I'm gonna go on a murder spree. My kids are gonna hate me. My wife's gonna leave me, because that's what I've been trained and what
Absolutely.
I've been, me being me. But I sit here today and I can honestly tell you that I believe that demons, angels, spirits in general are consciousness beings that they transpond time. Right?
Yeah, and you have to almost kind of look at it like a species, different species. I mean, religion just kind of it's very dualistic, and angel or demon. If it's not an angel, it's a motherfucking demon.
Yeah, yeah.
But you'll have things that are very infernal or chthonic, very hellish, that have those kind of demonic, fiery traits.
Right.
And then you'll have other things that have very angelic traits. And then you'll have things that have nothing to do with that. And then what's funny, when you look at what the term alien is, I mean, these things basically are aliens.
Right.
They're one type of alien.
Right.
They are a consciousness that is absolutely foreign, but you can make a conscious engagement with it.
So getting back to King Pyman, because this guy, right? It's a dude. It's a male kind of.
And it's funny because that is one of his different forms is kind of gargoyle-ish, kind of like you had mentioned. So that is interesting that you just kind of threw that out there.
Because as you're describing him, like that's what I'm coming to. Like I imagine this kind of gargoyle-like figure, but with a lot of power behind him. You know what I mean?
Now the power that spirits wield is. And again, I can't say for cut and dry, but from what I've seen to this point, they're definitely very adept at being able to engage and strategically manipulate things on a energetic level here. And that energetic level being able to influence emotion, frame of mind. And when you look at everything that pans out from internal decision making, that can very heavily affect the direction of reality. So again, coming back to saying, okay, King Pyman, I want to work in alignment with you to elevate and materialize the show on a national level. So what I would do is I would create what's called an internal template. Now remember when I mentioned that internal blank canvas earlier of communicating, that was a form of divination. I was clearing my mind, I made conscious contact with something, and I was letting it distill onto the plate so that I could behold and take that information in. Now in evocation, in doing ritual work, almost doing, I guess, spell work and things like that, putting your intention now out into the world to materialize as a reality. This is where the very fine arts of meditation and visualization are very important in this. Because now to the point of I have King Pyman in my presence, I would start to push that to the next level of now inside on that canvas, I would start to create using very intense visual imagery, in end result, basically a checkered flag of what I want to have happen at the end. So I would start to visualize you shaking hands with very high pro-ranking officials, that you're in a nice suit, you're standing in front of a beautiful car, because this is the point you're at now from the success of the show reaching amazing ratings that are just what everybody thought was incomprehensibly possible for you. So I start to see this, and as I'm visualizing the details of it, I run it through my mind, almost kind of like a short commercial. And what I've found personally for myself is if you're visualizing something moving, you can see the details in it much clearer. Things become much more acute than if you're trying to take that pen in your hand and imagine it still.
Right.
But if in your mind's eye you start to imagine that pen floating, your conscious awareness anchors onto it very intensely. So I would start to see the end result almost like a short commercial. And in this, I'm seeing the details. I'm trying to attach all the faculties of success in this visualization of you basically having the end result that I want for you. And what really brings it to life is emotion. Emotion is the fire on the match that makes it all happen.
You're talking like vision? Would vision fall into emotion? Cause
you're taking a vision and you're seeing it. Now you're not just seeing it as something external, but now you're seeing it and you're observing it as real. So then you attach, well, how would I feel that this now is real? And in this visualization, I would see people clapping. I would maybe see people cheers going on. You just this whole palpable presence of success.
Me and Randy being like household names.
Yeah, maybe you guys giving each other a big hug. You just achieved some type of goal. You're crying because it's like, wow, I never thought this was possible. So I would see this as if it's me, and I would attach that emotion to it. And now here's the point of I'm starting to take this visualization that I have, and I do what's called resurrecting it. After a while, after trying to pack all these details into it, your mind, your focus starts to wane. Your attention just starts to drift. You might think about the fucking lawn that has to be mowed, try to creep in on your mind and attention, but you can't let it. So what I'll do is I'll drop it and I'll start over and I'll go through the process again. But since I've already built that structure, it's very easy to resurrect. But now this time I'm seeing other details because I'm reliving it again. Now it's almost like an old memory. And I'm seeing it as if it happened with that stark intensity. As going through it, I'll keep going through it again until I start till it starts to wane. I'll do the process again till now I'm starting to get exhausted. So where just I'm about to fall out. As I'm doing this, and I'm seeing it with such a stark clarity, in my mind's eye, I'll imagine, and this is just something that works for me, I'll imagine two ends of a piece of film from the sides coming together like two rolls of film. And it rolls up the little moving vision, the TV box in the middle as if it was on a rolling scroll of film. And then I'll see it start to morph into this little marble of like black obsidian. And to me, I know that in that little marble that I've painstakingly poured all this information and visualized, it's almost like kind of like a little zip drive, a little flash drive. It's small, it's an object, but it contains immense information to architect a new reality.
It's got substance.
Yeah, exactly, and within it contains all the code for that. And then I'll imagine where my third eye is, I'll see that opening, and I'll see this marble that's inside of my head that I've put this together. I'll see it coming out, and I'll see it visually coming out of my head. Now it's before me. Now I take this, and I'll imagine almost kind of like there's a spider web that goes from my forehead to this cloud that is the energetic form of King Paimon before me, unstructured. And I'll give it over to him. I'll let him take it. And it's basically now on his shoulders, so to speak. He's known that there was a reason, but now I've taken this from me and I've purged it out. And I've given that over to him to basically now come into this dimension and to strategically use his ability
to make that happen.
To start to influence the satellite factors of what's going on to be in conducive alignment for you to be able to achieve your goal. So anybody who wasn't part of the ritual, who sees what's going on, they're going to see, like, people that you come in contact with, you're just going to be getting like a double take from them. They may not know why. They could be record execs or whatever. They'll just be drawn to you. They'll want to come shake your hand and come talk to you. And what's happening is these doors of opportunity that you won't even really realize are going on, they start aligning before you. Now, where this becomes a relationship with the spirit, with the demon, with the angel, with whatever it is that you've contacted that's forte is in alignment with what it is that you're trying to achieve, as long as you are doing everything on your part, this is where basically the alignments of the efforts come together to build the impossible. The spirit's basically going to be working like a backstage hand in your life and in reality, influencing the subtle factors to give you the opportunity that you never would have fucking gotten. Now, as long as you're doing everything you can, you keep doing the shows, you present yourself well, you keep staying in touch with the technology that's going to keep making things better for you, you keep your drive going, then you're going to be able to walk through these doors of opportunity successfully when they present themselves to you, thus achieving what most people would literally deem as miraculous.
Or the impossible.
And then tying into one of the other faculties of, like when I said ritual is this, it's kind of this clown juggle of many things going on. One of the other things you have to do is you have to exhaust your emotional attachment for the end result, your obsession.
I got that. That's fucking...
Well, the thing is, you have to get that out into the ritual. So what you have to do is now transmute I'm going to do this, I want this so bad, I can taste it, to at the end of the ritual, now you have to basically don the mask, the mantle of it is done. It's not even a factor if it's going to happen. Now you're in a changed mindset of, I know it's going to happen, and I'm going to do everything that I'm supposed to do to make this happen. And what you'll find out is the people who don't exhaust this emotional attachment in the ritual, it lingers. And when that lingers, that transmutes into fear and doubt, which in magic, black magic, white, I don't give a fuck what you want to call it, that is the biggest backfires that you could ever have. Because what will happen is,
once you doubt it,
once you start doubting, then you doubt your whole power of the forces that you've come in alignment with what you got going on. So if you start going, oh, fuck, well, the hell was that? Was I just daydreaming? Is that bullshit? Is this like some fantasy? That ain't going to work.
Right.
So now you're going to start treating it as if it didn't work. And you're basically going to be living towards the reality that it was bullshit. So you will start attracting all of the things that come with those negative connotations.
Which is why some people, I think, look at the end result being that once you dive into this shit, you're going to fucking get all the kind of negative, bad things going into it.
And really getting into this, the only way to be successful, if you want to get into this, is the only way out is through. When you look at this, the way that I look at this is what everybody's trying to achieve is that highest knowledge. The answers, what they would get in heaven, so to speak.
Right.
Everything. That's at the top of the mountain. Now, when you have what's called the right-hand path that's designated and it's within the confines of what God deems okay, and this is morally pure and this is acceptable, it's kind of like taking this long road, this winding road all the way up around the mountaintop to the peak. But the elevation doesn't increase very much. The grade is kind of low and it's a very safe walk. You can't really fuck up on this walk. It's just going to take forever. Now, when you delve into the black arts, you're basically are now taking this shortcut that is a black cave that goes under and up through the middle of the mountain. But the bad thing is that it's wrought with bushes, thorns. Nobody really goes through it. And so there's no tread path.
The path least traveled.
That's it. It is literally the path least traveled. So I mean, you are going through it with your own lantern, and you encounter some scary shit in there. And the only way to get through is to keep pushing deeper, to keep plummeting deeper into the rabbit
Because
hole.
everything ends up, whether you go the long route.
All
right?
roads lead to Rome, brother.
All roads lead to Rome. So
some take many lifetimes.
So that's interesting. That was a lot, but it was definitely very well informative. And I like how you use me wanting to succeed and stuff as a good example, because as somebody who would take a different route, Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, Hinduism, Sikh, whatever it may be, and they may want to go around the other slow path up the mountain, this would be the same. It all ends to the same place, man, and all roads lead to Rome.
The bad thing with that is that it will take so long.
It takes a strong person to go through there.
And plus, there's so much that you have to incinerate off. So much dross that has to be burned off when you take these cushioned, coddled routes. There's long-term lessons that you don't get to the bottom to until years later sometimes, if you ever get to the bottom of them, because
you're talking about like somebody who is like goes Christianity or something, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of life lessons, a lot of just the understanding of the matrix of reality, of when you stay in that cushioned box and you're basically told, believe this is it, that you're not going to venture outside the parameter to experience reality. And that's really when you get into like what's called white magic and black magic. What separates the two really is that white magic deals within the confines of what they say the divine deems as acceptable. So it's funny because as a magician, you're really hand-tied. You can only do something if you would think it's God's will. So, and it's also interesting how that ties in with a lot of the Christian God and everything, but they feel that they have been given this lawful license to be able to use the magical mechanics, but in a divinely approved method. But now when you look at the left-hand path, what makes that difference is basically you're saying, okay, I'm not putting the laws of some deity to deem what's acceptable for me to do or without my power. I'm going to make that decision myself. If I want to do something what people would consider extremely fucked up and baneful with it, that's up to me. Or I can do something extremely positive and benevolent.
Right.
I have that no handcuffed. I'm in the path of lawlessness.
Right.
Which
you're your own God. You're in control. That is where I find myself today, man. Is that, and I think it's because, and I've said this a lot, it's because of my experiences. I think why I've lost, and it's not that I don't appreciate or don't, because I appreciate how I was brought up. I still baptize my son. I'll baptize future children because I understand the tradition and the love behind it that my family is into. That's just because it's a family thing. I love my family, and I understand that what I see isn't what they see. They're going around the mountain. Me seeing all the fucked up shit I've seen, me going through all the tribulations that I put myself through, I have always chosen to travel the road less traveled. And I think that's why it's like I'm almost to the point spirituality where it's like I look at my wife and I look at my mother and my in-laws and my grandmother, and I'm like, you know what? You believe what you want to believe. I'm going to believe what I want to believe, and I'll see you at the top. And that's just me being me. I'm a little dude, man, but I'm a harsh person because I've seen the harshness and the nastiness in the world that I'm almost drawn to it. Maybe I focus on like the more harsh reality in things, but I know that being like that, I'm still wanting to do good. I mean, I'm doing this podcast. I'm not doing this podcast to like put fucking propaganda out there and have some kind of bloody revolution. I want to hear people's stories, and hopefully somebody will listen to a show and start listening, and it might change the way they think, and they might hear a guest I have on and get into fitness or whatever it may be to find some kind of peace in themselves, because podcasts have that ability, and that's what I'm going for. I just know that my spiritual belief, and Randy is too. Randy's more of an atheist. He's said numerous times, but we see things on a broader perspective, you know, and that's why I love having you on, man. This is cool.
Dude, I love doing it, and I'm the same way, man. It's all about enlightenment, and that's really what got me into this. Like I was kind of saying in the first one, is you either have what's real and what's not real, and you can take belief, whatever the fuck sounds good to you, and for whatever reasons why, you can take that off the table. Once you start having practical experience with this, then you can start having verifiable effects of what's going on, and now you can start having something to build upon and where you want to take it, how you want to apply it. But there's a huge misunderstanding in just what the occult is in general, what you can do with it, what the repercussions are. I'm telling you, man, ever since I've brought it into my own life, I've been a much more positive person. I've been a much more happier person.
See, that's amazing to me because I see that on you. You're always smiling. You're happy. You know, you're successful. You know, for somebody to say, oh, you get into all that stuff, you're going to be unhappy and bad and this, that, and the other, dude, you're not that. You don't come off as that kind of a person.
Yeah, thank you. I don't feel like it, and it's only brought me enlightenment. It's brought power to my fingertips, and this is what's called ascent. This is this exponential spiritual growth and understanding and enlightenment and expansion of consciousness that comes from the experiences and being able to tap into all of these very, very powerful wellsprings of conscious knowledge out there. But it's, you know, you're going to have people that condemn it and predetermine what it is, who have absolutely no understanding of how it works. And it's not this it's not this demonic category that has no future in it. And, you know, if that's the way you see it and that's the way you fuck with it, it could be. But like the biggest thing that really got me into this is that I took these guys up on a fucking challenge. Basically, there was this guy E.A. Coetting, that I got into. He's a more modern occultist, a guy that I work with in several varied degrees, and great friend of mine now. But he was one of the guys whose content showed me the potential of what can be achieved with this. So I basically took him up on the challenge. He was basically saying, look, I've used these methods, I've got these results. And he's saying, I'm not here to tell you what reality is or isn't. I'm telling you, these are the methods that you can go experience. Why don't you call me back and tell me your experiences with interacting with the Archangel Michael? Shit that people think that they know all about. How about you use these methods and you have a face-to-face conversation with them? I was just like...
Archangel Michael, being a Catholic all those years and just...
Yeah.
You know, Archangel Michael, he's like the protector of the paratroopers. So when I became a paratrooper, somebody... I think it was my Uncle Keith. He got me this Archangel Michael little... What was it? Like a little medallion I wore. And I wore that fucker to war, man. And... Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I came back. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying by any means, but I wore that every fucking mission I went on. I made sure I had that.
Kind of a strange coincidence how things kind of co-align with the results of the nature of the entity that you've come into alignment with.
Exactly.
For the things that result from that. And what's funny is once you start contacting these things, apart from just taking general... a community assumption for what he is, what he stands for. Once you actually utilize the methods to talk to him yourself, you'll find out some amazing shit. For one being that one of his specialties is teaching you how to use the divinational arts. And here it is, if you were to talk to many Christians who are very just devout strictly to the Bible, they'd be like, divinational arts? That's some bullshit.
Right.
He would never do that.
Right.
Have you spoken to the motherfucker?
Yeah.
You find out something amazing when you actually become into conscious contacts with these forbidden intelligences.
And it's funny how he's the protector of heaven. He's the fucking badass dude. Like, he's the dude. I mean, he's in the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
He's all throughout the Bible as the most badass motherfucking angel out there.
And funny because you'll see a lot of these. I mean, it's funny. It's almost sad that they become pigeonholed as just like, oh, he's the master protector, because once you really start to engage a lot of these components and these beings, you start to find out, wow, that's only one aspect of what they're a specialty of, and all this other shit I never heard of. But when you now have a usable method to be able to make conscious contact with these things, damn near each and every time, you're using this methodical syntax. I mean, it's like a system, and that's what I love about these arts, is that you go through the formula, and as long as you have input every variable along that procedural step, it's like pulling a lever and the fucking ball comes out every fucking time.
Wow. That's cool.
And that is what's given me like a confidence over the years of what can be done with this. It's not just the trivial bullshit of using candle magic to bring you a girl, get your number, or fucking pay next month's rent. You start seeing the global shit that you could fucking do with this. You could change headlines. You can do the unfathomable with this.
There was that movie, Men Who Stare at Goats. You ever see that movie?
I was talking about that with somebody the other day, and I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it? So it's based on truth. I don't know how much the movie is, but the government actually did with Green Berets. They focused on astral projection and getting these guys to literally stare at goats and astral project. I don't want to quote it, man, because I don't know any of the names, but I know that it's been documented the CIA messed with this shit.
Yeah, they did more like bilocation,
right?
Which is you're not like in an astral projection, your consciousness is divorcing itself from the physical shell in an astral body of light. In bilocation, you're now toggling into a visionary state of wherever it is that you set your intention.
Yeah, they would do that. And interesting results. You see that movie, though. It's pretty cool. It's got George Clooney in it. It's kind of funny at times, but it was interesting because I had asked a buddy, I asked a buddy with a Green Beret, I said, hey, that shit really go down? He goes, well, yeah, a lot of that stuff, was true. The movie Hollywood changed it up a little bit, but it's interesting that if the government's going to get into this shit and put tax dollars and pay for some of this,
Yeah, to be able to
begs the wonder.
Exploit the possibilities with it.
Begs the wonder, man. Let me ask you this. Is there a price to pay by getting into all this?
Do
you sell your soul? I mean, do you lose a part of you?
It's funny because it will change you. It will definitely... It will burn parts of who you are away, and that can be very devastating. You will find as you get into this and you start progressing through different stages of enlightenment, it's also going to reflect in your physical reality. You're going to lose friendships that are very dire to you. People are going to start coming out of your life once you're meant to ascend from that particular stage of reality.
Funny you say that, because I was watching an interview that Snoop Dogg did. Bear with me. In the early days, he would always have his crew from Long Beach, and he would always have a lot of his homies and stuff riding around him. And somebody had asked him, where are they now? And his answer was fucking spectacular. He had said that, and he didn't really use like his gangster lingo. He was just talking, and he said, over time, you can take care of this buddy, you can take care of that buddy as you're growing, you can have them around, but after a while you got to be like, hey, catch up. And as you were talking about all this, for some reason this interview came to mind. I haven't thought about it since I watched it. I don't even think I told my wife about it, but he said after a certain time he had to say, catch up, like, you need to catch up, because I'm on a different level. And he says that he found himself where he's at today, where he's lost a lot of friends and a lot of people because he has, I guess, ascended to the point where he is now. And that makes a lot of sense. Because most people, they want to clock in the 9 to 5s. They want to say, someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that. If you want more for you as a person, or I guess even globally, you got to rise up somehow. And I'm learning that, man. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know anything about what you're talking about, but a lot of it makes a lot of sense, because when I decided to do this podcast and Randy jumped on, we decided that we're not going to do this for fun. This isn't a fucking hobby. Nice. It might look like it to some people. I'm pretty sure there's people out there who say that, but I don't give a fuck, because this isn't. I look what we've done in 2 months, and I got this amazing dude good friend of mine doing this with me, and we're going as far as we want to go with it. And I know what I want for this show. I know what level I want to be on. I know that what it's going to take, and you know, I have my ambition, and you know what? If my path and what I choose to do to get there, if people don't like it, oh fucking well, this is my life. You know what I'm saying? And
that's the story of my shit right there.
You know, and that's just me being me, and that's why I'm open to have you on the show to talk about this, because there's that scene in Star Wars in Episode 3 where Lord Sidious talks to Anakin before he becomes Darth Vader, and he says, you know, in order to understand the Force in its entirety, you can't just focus on the dogmatic view of the Jedi. You have to know all aspects of the Force, even the dark side. And ultimately, that advice turns out maybe bad in some ways because he goes down a bad path, but ultimately their balance comes to the Force and everything's well. I mean, that's just the way I look at it, man. I could be using a bad analogy.
I think that's a very, very appropriate analogy. And
you know,
fortune favors the bold, brother. And
yeah,
there's so many things.
I know I'm on the path, man. What do you do on a daily basis, man? Like, what's like? You mind saying like what your 9 to 5 is?
Yeah, usually it's funny because I work in the gasoline refining industry.
Okay.
And then I also do ritual work, consultation for people, semi-professionally. So it's funny. I do rituals for people and engage conversations like we're having now.
Right.
For people that are either just trying to initiate themselves into the higher mysteries of the black arts, or people who have been into it for a while, but they're hitting roadblocks. Like, oh shit, this has been going wrong, or I can't achieve a visionary communion with this entity. What do I got to do? How do I achieve rapture state? How does possession work? I mean, it's like it's so many rabbit holes that.
You ever get a guy come up to you and be like, dude, I'm trying to bang this chick and it's just not working. What do I do?
Does
that ever happen to you? Like,
it's funny because I'll have people like hire me for a ritual to either bring back an ex-girlfriend or bring a certain particular into their life. So what I always do is before I just say, okay, I'm going to do this ritual for you, I make a mandatory appointment for consultation so that we could talk about the inner dynamics of what's going on, also in the satellites in the underlying parts of this situation in general. So, I mean, once you can almost look at things like, okay, why did you guys break up in the first place? You can also start exploring things like, are you guys really meant for each other?
Right.
And once you get down to kind of like the brass tacks of like, is your endeavor that you're pursuing, is this going to be healthy for you? Is this going to be appropriate for you? Is this going to be powerfully benevolent in your life? Once we find out that has been substantiated, then we can proceed with ritual, which is bringing that explosive, tactical, strategic power from behind the scenes to couple now this desire that you have, but to now replace it with a new template of reality. This new puzzle piece is going to be inserted over the current one, and thus they will achieve what they're going for. Hence, you go through these methods successfully and actually put them into motion. It takes a lot more than just kind of knowing how they work and trying to do that shit like the fucking secret they talk about. Oh, I'm just aligning my positive intentions with that. Well, you gotta not only just kind of look at the fucking engine and think about it going. You got to turn the key. You got to put the ball into motion over the cliff. You got to get these things into motion.
You're referring to that documentary, The Secret thing, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I watched that shit, man.
You know, and it's funny because
like I watched it.
They take certain components of what is a requirement for these mechanics to work, but dude, it's so far off. It's only one part of it.
I watched it and I was like, something can't be right, man. You can't just look in the mirror every day and focus like that. And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, affirmations are very powerful, but when you couple it with ritual and making conscious contact with your higher self or the appropriate forces, they're going to strategically work with you and actually bringing this into materialization. I mean, you can't beat it.
Yeah,
and,
man.
And that's, dude, the whole reason I'm into this is because I have practical success with this. I've been able to log down what I'm doing, I do ritual for it, and it comes to me.
That's probably the single most amazing thing I've had someone sit in here and tell me, man, because, I mean, wow. Yeah, I'm open. I'm definitely open, man. I'm open to everything. Like I said, I've seen shit that has, in my own life, that has made me question, and that has made me really focus on the reality that there's so much more out there. And, you know, what you're bringing up is just amazing, man. So we hope to have you on again. Next time Randy will be in, we'll schedule it to where Randy will be in, because I know Randy's going to listen to this, and he's going to have some questions for sure. He's fun to talk to, because Randy will just say whatever's on his mind, and he'll ask whatever he thinks of, and you know, he's one of the most, personality-wise, one of the strongest people I know, man. He's a great dude.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because you know, when you're touching with something sensitive like this, it's hardball questions are the only way to keep it real.
Yeah, no.
And you did amazing, man, and I was more than honored to be able to come sit in with you on this.
Well, we're 2 months into this, and I don't know where it's going, and I know where it will be, one way or the other. I'm getting there, and I'm getting there. I'm getting to where I want to be, because I got plans, dude. I got plans and I got goals, and there's so much power going from my mouth to this microphone to that computer right now. And I understand it. I understand what it is. And when people ask me what a podcast is, it's not a fucking simple answer, because a podcast is so much more than a microphone and somebody pressing play on a mobile device or on a phone or on a computer. There's so much more coming through this, from my brain to my mouth to this microphone, same from you into this. It's power, and it's something important. So we'll see where it goes, man. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much, dude, for coming on. Until next time, man, this is fucking... we can go on and on, dude, but I got to keep it to an hour so we can keep things kind of mellow and shit.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back, brother, and we'll do it again.
Where can people find you, man? Are you open for people looking you up online, or you want to keep it kind of low-key?
No problem. You can look me up right now. The easiest way would be to go to the page that I work semi-professionally now, would be through natebales.com.
Okay.
And that'll take you to the landing page on my compadre EA Coetting's site.
Okay.
Definitely a huge mentor in my life. Great friend, amazing scholar in the arts, and somebody who's actually done something with this. And that's, you can find me on his site there, and here probably before the end of the year, you're going to be able to find this massive endeavor that I'm launching called Fourth Roans.
Okay.
So keep an eye open for that one.
For sure. When it launches, man, we'll have you on. That'll be the next time, or even before. It doesn't matter, but we'll have you on for sure whenever that happens.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, man. This is the Chadman and Randy Show. Don't be scared. Chadman out.